And I can take that sticker off. Okay, it's lovely to see you all. I've got some notes here, and on the top of my notes it says, don't forget that when you're a bit nervous, you speed up. So that's my first note. So welcome anyway. Welcome to my little talk titled Horses, Kids and a Piece of Paper. And also, oh yes, of course, it's backwards. Did you know that? National Backwards Day, which I just thought was really quite funny in terms of looking in a new direction. I didn't plan that. It just popped up when I was thinking about the date, and I was like, perfect. So my idea tonight is to talk to you a little bit and just tell you, I suppose it's my story really, about how horses and kids and a piece of paper brought me to this point. And I'm going to start obviously with horses because that's the main theme of my life really. I've got to be careful because I could easily talk to you about horses all evening and tell you lots of stories. So my notes are to keep me on track. But I'll tell you that my earliest memories of, well, literally my earliest memories are of two large white horses. And I don't remember much about them except them being there. And when I asked my mum about it, she told me that when I was about 2 or 3, she used to take me for a walk, and I was still in the pram, to go and feed these horses because my mum also loved horses. And so I think that's kind of where it all started. And all I ever wanted to do really was work with horses. And I was lucky enough to have ponies when I was a child. And right through school, I had horses. And I left school and trained with a very traditional British Horse Society. And back in those days, which I'm talking about the 70s, there was the only thing you could get a qualification in really. Oh my God. Can you see the ladybirds just landed on my nose? Oh, I don't know what to say about that. I should have titled it Horses, Ladybirds, Kids, and a Piece of Paper. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, the only qualification you could get in those days was to be a riding instructor. There weren't these days you can do all sorts of things with horses, but that was all there was. So that's what I trained as. Although I have to say, I wasn't really interested in people or teaching people. I just wanted to hang out with horses. That was all I wanted to do. And I had years of working with horses in all sorts of disciplines. And I'm going to fast forward really quickly and take you to when I was in my 40s, because I was managing a large yard for the Navy, actually, and a horse came into my life called Rocky. I'll tell you his name. And he was another white horse, funnily enough. Well, grey, really, but yes. And Rocky pointed me in a new direction, quite rudely, actually. And that's another story, which involves a ride in an ambulance and several days in a hospital. But Rocky didn't want to do anything that I wanted him to do. And he'd learned lots of different ways of saying no. And I was really stuck. All my tradition, everything I'd learned up until that point just didn't seem to help me. And because of Rocky, I started looking for other training methods. And I actually stumbled across something, again, quite by accident, while I was sitting waiting to be picked up by the ambulance, because he dumped me and at an event. And while I was sitting waiting for the ambulance in the reception of this very large posh equestrian centre, I saw somebody who was advertising natural horsemanship clinic. So again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but basically I started looking at these other methods of natural horsemanship, and it really helped. And I learned a lot of a lot of techniques and new strategies and ways of dealing with difficult horses, shall we say. In fact, that's exactly what I thought at the time, that what I was learning was going to help me deal with horses that were challenging. And I learned all these new skills and things improved. But I only used the skills with these difficult horses. And my other horses that I thought were okay, I just carried on as normal. Until one day I was, again, it's another long story, but I ended up, because Rocky, this grey horse, was going quite well, and I was supposed to take him to an event to do some natural horsemanship classes. And I couldn't take him because he was lame. So I took another horse. And I took Socks, who was not challenging. He was in my, you know, it seemed to me at the time that we didn't sort of have any problems and everything was going really well. But what happened was that when I was in this event, I was asked to do some things with Socks and I couldn't do them. And they were really simple things. They were just, they didn't involve anything. It wasn't a competition. It was just asking. It was very simple. It was just asking the horse, encouraging the horse to walk towards me without pulling on a rope. So, and he couldn't do it. And I couldn't understand why until the person who was training us walked up behind me and said, "I don't blame him. I wouldn't come to you either." And I was shattered because I couldn't understand what she meant, because I mean, I was just standing there trying to encourage him to come towards me by, you know, not pulling on a rope, but just a gentle feel, and he wouldn't come. Anyway, this, you know, piqued my curiosity, and I obviously wanted to know what this trainer was talking about. And again, it's quite a long story, but I went to speak to her and she showed me some more things. And basically what I saw was that, like in an instant, was that up until then, I thought that everything I was doing and everything I learned was about the horse. I didn't see that it was to do with me. I didn't see that the horses were reacting to my energy and I was very intense. I was very, you know, I like to get things done and get things right. And it's hard to explain in a short webinar, but literally in a moment, I suddenly realized that it was much more about me and learning and looking at myself and becoming more self-aware, and that everything I'd learned was to do with all horses and all people. It wasn't just techniques to help difficult horses. It was actually a huge moment because I was so upset, actually. I nearly quit horses altogether because I felt guilty, I guess, and a little bit ashamed that everything I'd done up until that point, you know, I had lots of regrets about things I hadn't seen and didn't know. Anyway, Socks pointed me in the direction that Rocky would point me, but in a much more profound way, to the point that I quit my job, got a job as a cleaner and a housekeeper, and I saved up money and I went to America and I studied with some people in America to really understand about equine psychology and natural horsemanship and energy and all these things. And I spent about 2 years over there. And what happened during that time was, I'm still passionate about horses, but I became really interested in human behavior and human psychology. And again, continued in a new direction, because I then started working in equine assisted therapy, which is where, well, actually what I actually chose to do wasn't really a therapy, but I ended up working for another charity, and this is over several years, called the Horse Course, which, in fact, the lady who started it was one of my students, and she took her horses into prisons to work with young offenders using horses that were trained in natural horsemanship methods. And we worked together, and I became a facilitator for her charity. And the Horse Course is basically, it's an intervention, and it's aimed at working with people, particularly young people, where talking therapy doesn't work, where they can't be reached. And it's based on activities with specially trained horses. There's no classroom, there's no talking therapy, there's no discussion of the past or anything like that. We just work with the young people, with the horses on the ground in a safe environment, like an arena or a enclosed environment. And what we were doing was well, I'll read you, because otherwise I'm going to go off. So the Horse Course, basically, and this is what it says on their website, because I looked at it, is about teaching, rehearsing, and repeating key resilient skills in an intensive and challenging but fun way, with feedback in the moment from specially trained horses. So that's what I started doing. And it was remarkable, the kind of breakthroughs we had with these young people, because the horses don't have an agenda, really. They're just, there in the moment. And because of the training they have to do various activities, we were able to help the young people rehearse these resilient skills, if you like, such as being calm and relaxed, being assertive instead of aggressive, focus, being in the moment, communication and body language, all sorts of things with these children. And the course it's normally over sort of 4 or 5 days, so it's quite a short course. And I got really involved with this and absolutely loved doing it, and started my own charity. In fact, I set up 2 hubs, one in Gloucestershire, which is still running, and one here in Wiltshire. And everything was going brilliantly until I became ill. And I was ill, physically ill, for about 2 years. I had a fairly serious chronic illness, which involved quite a lot of time in hospital and several operations, and quite kind of life-saving stuff. But I recovered, obviously. But during that time, I had to let the charity go, because I'd been awarded quite a lot of money by the National Lottery. But there's always a time limit on these things. And because I was ill so long, I had to give the money back. And I did the whole thing on my own. So I didn't have any help or anyone else to sort of hold the fort. And I couldn't keep all the horses going as well. So, and I was ill for about 2.5 years. So, it's too long to keep that kind of treading water. So unfortunately, that side of it, although it's still running and I am now doing it again, my base, my little setup, I had to let it go. And when I recovered, or while I was recovering, I was also really suffering, and always have, or always had, with quite serious depression and anxiety, which I'd never really managed to sort out at all. In fact, I was taking antidepressants and things for years. And when I came out of hospital, although I'd recovered, I was very unfit. I put on a lot of weight. I felt old and used up. I had my 60th birthday when I was in hospital, I remember. And I really thought, this is it. This is my life. It's over. So I came out of hospital. I still had a couple of horses. I had no work and I was feeling pretty low. And then, well, lo and behold, I stumble into this old friend who tells me about a lady she was working with called Nicola Bird, who was teaching her about the three principles, which I'd never heard anything of this. But this friend of mine was raving about how it had helped her with her anxiety and confidence and all sorts of things. And so I decided to check it out. And that was my introduction to the three principles. And actually, it's interesting because there's a parallel really with what I did with the natural horsemanship, because I did Nicola's program, which was about 12 weeks, and felt better and got fit and started riding and went off on a crazy adventure on a bike ride and did all sorts of stuff. And I figured out that that the three principles had fixed me. So I was off again and back doing the horses, and I got a part-time job and everything was working really well. And things were looking quite good. But I kind of forgot about the three principles. And then it was a little while before COVID, I started to go downhill again, started to feel a bit down. And there were issues in my life that I'd never really come to terms with. Like my son had been ill and I really struggled. My grandchildren were having all sorts of labels stuck on them. And my daughter had left the UK and was living in Vancouver. And these were all areas that caused me quite a lot of distress. And out of the blue, an email from Nicola Bird popped up and I read it. And I thought, I must do that again. I must get fixed again. I must do that program. So I did. I started looking at it again, but this time something had changed. Something was different. And I wasn't really sure what it was, but I started reading lots more books from lots of other people within the 3P community. And then I volunteered to help out at the conference. And while I was a volunteer at the conference, I bumped into somebody who introduced me to iHeart. I don't know if anyone here knows about iHeart, but it's a London-based charity that is basically three principles, comes from that community, and has a resilience program, which is aimed at young people. And I got really interested because there was something I wasn't quite sure, I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt like there was something in this three principles that I'd not seen. And I had this idea that maybe putting iHeart together with the horses and all this might work, but I still wasn't really sure. Anyway, I signed up to do the training. And the training, iHeart comes from, their premise is really that they're offering an instruction manual to young people. They also work with teachers and families, but the idea is an instruction manual to understand how our minds work and where the source of our well-being lies. So, I mean, I listened to this and I read all this and started in the training. And the training goes through the framework, the kind of foundations of the course, and then it looks at all sorts of areas that affect young people, you know, in school and relationships and so on, and anxiety and whatever. And it talks about traveling, that we're on a journey and we're traveling a road, and our mind helps us navigate our journey. And the road, there's actually two roads, and we're always on one of these two roads, and they're quite different, the roads. And they talk about the logic road, which is where we're in unattached, or the unattached road, which is where we are in our well-being, and then the false logic road, or the attached road, when we're not. So I was learning all about this, and looking at these ideas about innate well-being, and that we attach our well-being to different, we make up rules and have beliefs that we think our well-being is attached to, I don't know, getting things right, or having money in the bank, or whatever. And all of this was kind of, it was going in, and I was getting it, I thought. And then we got to the session about bullying. And this is where I would like you to, have you guys brought a piece of paper? Yeah. Are you still with me, by the way? I've got a little note on here saying check in, and I haven't. So are you still following me? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay. All right. So in one of the sessions in iHeart, there's a whole session on bullying. And it's actually entitled, let me get this right. The title is Help, I'm Being Bullied, and Help, I Can't Control My Anger. Which I think is quite interesting straight away, because it's already pointing to somebody being bullied and somebody being a bully as being two sides of a coin. So that was quite interesting. Anyway, at the start of the session, we are asked to do an exercise. So I'm going to get you guys to do it. I don't know how this is going to work, but let's give it a go. So here, have you got a piece of paper? So I'm going to read you something, and I'd like you to do what I asked, what the teacher in the thing I'm reading is telling the children to do, okay? All right, so here we go. So a teacher was teaching her class about bullying, and she had them do the following exercise. So here we go. She had the children take a piece of paper and told them to scrunch it up, stomp on it, and really make a mess of it. Okay, you can imagine in class, the children love this, you know, they're literally jumping up and down on it and getting really excited, and it's well scrunched up. Okay, so then the teacher says, then she had them unfold the paper. Okay, because you've got to be careful not to tear it. So unfold the paper and then smooth it out. Okay. So everyone's trying to smooth the paper back out. And they're smoothing the paper back. And then she asks the children, she says, okay, tell the paper you're sorry. So we're all apologizing to the piece of paper. And then she says, she points out that even though they are sorry and are trying to fix the paper, smoothing it out, those scars, those creases in the paper would never go away, no matter how hard they try to repair it. And that's what happens when a child bullies another child. They may say they're sorry, but the scars are there forever. And the looks on the faces of the children in the classroom told her the message hit home. So I'm doing this training in Zoom. Okay, I've got my piece of paper and I'm smoothing it out. And I'm listening to her and I'm just in a mess. I'm crying. I'm in a complete mess because all I could think of, I can remember it now, was all the times in my life that I'd been bullied or somebody had been mean to me. When my dad was very strict. You know, all this came flooding back and I sat there and I was like, oh my God, yes. No wonder, no wonder I'm such a mess. I was completely victim in it, completely. Anyway, we were told to put the paper away. And then we continued the lesson about bullying. And we listened to people talking, a really good video, which if anyone wants to afterwards ask me, because it's on the internet, about girls talking about how they bully people and then at the end why they bully. We looked at anger and what it is as a feeling that's a reaction as opposed to a response to bad behavior or upsetting behavior. So we really, really kept looking at this and we did lots of activities and all coming from this same premise that we have innate well-being, that we cannot be lost or broken or taken away or damaged. And this is coming at me and I'm going, yes, 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 and I'm taking it all on. Still a little bit, I'm still a little bit trembly and everything, but I'm going through it and I get it. But I kind of agreed with that teacher, that I was scarred. Anyway, we get to the end of the session and we're going through everything we've learned. And then she tells us to pick up the piece of paper again. And I was like, oh, piece of paper again. So we get the piece of paper. And you don't need to do this again. You don't need another piece of paper. And then she says, okay. She says, now I'm going to read you something again. She said, but now I'm an I Heart teacher. And she starts to read the scenario. So she says, an I Heart teacher was teaching her class about bullying and had them do the following exercise. She had the children take a piece of paper and told them to scrunch it up, stomp on it, really make a mess of it, but be careful not to tear it. Then she had them unfold the paper, smooth it out, and told them to say they were very sorry. She pointed out that even though they were sorry and tried to fix the paper, those scars would never go away no matter how hard they tried to repair it. But then she said, fortunately, you are not a piece of paper. You are a human being with a beautiful spirit. Nothing anyone says or does can hurt or damage who you really are. Oh gosh, it's going to get to me again. You are far more powerful and resilient than you may have realized until now. Who you really are cannot be crumpled, scarred, or messed up. Who you really are cannot be a victim in any way. Bullies are suffering and filled with insecurity in the moment, but who they are really can't be damaged either. But sometimes they don't know that and start acting in a detrimental way. You can forgive them and feel compassion for them, but you don't have to accept any of their unhelpful actions. And the children laughed and smiled, happy their teacher didn't try to make them think they were fragile and weak like pieces of paper. Happy that she was kind, wise, and honest. So I don't know how this has worked for you, but for me, that exercise, it was a bit like the insight I had with the horses, only bigger. And I can remember it now because I really suddenly saw that I wasn't a piece of paper in a way that none of the teaching really throughout the course had shown me. It really was, the activity itself was just hit me in a way that was just a light bulb. And I'll never forget it, because it was the moment I look back where it was the biggest insight of my life. And somehow the impact of that insight, which has the implication of that insight has been huge in ways that I sometimes hadn't even noticed until I realized that I was no longer stressed about my family and my son and my daughter and, you know, all the other things. It had just kind of, I'm not saying those things had changed, but something had changed in me. Something had changed in me hugely. And as time went on, and what I'm doing now, and I look back over the things I've done in my life, where I used to feel regret or guilt or shame, there are still some areas where it's a bit sticky, but it's so much less. Somehow I've found compassion for myself, and I've just seen things so differently. And when I look at the work that I do with the horses and the young people, which I don't do so much of because I'm trying to put it together in a different way, but I realized that the horse course work I did with the children, that's still happening, is wonderful work. I thought that it was the activities that we were teaching the kids these qualities, you know, that somehow, and then I realized that we're not teaching, we're just uncovering what's already there. And there's so many examples of work I've done with young people where we haven't actually even started doing the activities. You know, there was a little boy, and not so little actually, a teenage boy who came one day who wouldn't get out of his car. He had hair, I couldn't see his face, his fringe covered his eyes, and he wouldn't speak, and he didn't want to do the course, and he wouldn't get out of the car. And it took me all afternoon to persuade him to get out of the car. And the way I did it was I basically put a pony in the car with him, a little Shetland, and somehow the pony drew him out and drew him into the reception. And then we ended up in the afternoon sitting in the stable on the floor with his pony, and he eventually started talking. But within 4 days, I mean, I've still got pictures of him. He became my poster boy, Jake. I'm still in touch with him, and this was 2014. The things that I taught him with the horse helped him, but the qualities I was trying to put in him were already there. It's just that somehow the horses helped bring it out, you know? And that's the difference. That's the piece of paper, that's the insight that I had, that all the things I was trying to put into me to make me a better person weren't really working. They helped, but they not in the same way, because I didn't realize I already had them. I think that's the end. Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, I hope you stayed with me with all that. What's the time? Oh gosh, it's an hour. Oh no, it's not. That's perfect. So pleased with myself. Okay, I would love to take some questions or comments. And yeah, Rachel, you've got your hand up, so please unmute and talk to me.
Yes, I couldn't leave. I was so gripped.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be here.
I know. Just testament. Thank you, Sharon. That was so beautiful. I loved it. And two things that really struck me, one more recently and one in the very beginning. But I also, what I loved was that I felt, what I heard is that it was also really powerful for you to feel like that crumpled piece of paper in that moment. That even though that's not the truth of who you are in that moment, that was a portal to feeling a certain amount of tenderness and self-compassion. So it's like there was a wisdom in being a crumpled piece of paper for a moment, before realizing that's not the truth of who you are. So I loved that so much, and love to hear, I don't know, any other thoughts you or anyone else has about that. Like there's a wisdom to passing through that belief on the way to the real truth. And then something in the very beginning you said really hit me when you were talking about everything that you learned, the challenges that you think you were facing with your horses showed you that what you learned wasn't helping you. And I just thought of, you know, for all of us in any area of our life, be it professional or finances or romance, like if we're up against a roadblock, we're believing something that isn't helping us. Like that is conditioning, essentially.
Absolutely.
We have there's meaning there that's not serving us. So I just loved that illustration as well. So I'm now determined to come visit you this summer and
please do.
donate be a volunteer, and spend some time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for hanging in there. Amy.
Hi Sharon, thank you, that was so lovely. I love hearing these stories about the horses. I'm fascinated by it. I read that the book, is it called The Horse Boy?
Yes.
The story of and I read that years ago, and I was just amazed by that, because I've never had any kind of time or contact really around horses and stuff. So I just think, and I just love the hearing how, you know, the horses can literally just draw this stuff out of people, and it must just be that there's just no, you know, animals and stuff, there's just no agenda, is there? There's no judgment, and I don't know, I just love that anyway. And I love the story, the crumpled paper thing. I remember doing that now, because I did a bit of the training. I was back in that place of going, of course. But that for me was literally one of my biggest insight when I realized that. And I can't remember now who it was that I'd listened to that was explaining that a few years back, but I will never forget that feeling that I got. It was such an overwhelming feeling of just like, oh my God, I'm not damaged, I'm not broken, I'm not and just realizing that no matter what happens in life, that part of you just can never be touched. It just it doesn't matter what it is, what happens, that will never have any effect on your, you know, on your in yourself and the true essence of who you are. That just can never be damaged, because it's formless. And that shifted so much for me. So it was lovely hearing you talking about your experience of that, and just remembering that moment of myself realizing that it's just it's a real game changer thing, isn't it? But no, I really enjoyed all of that. It's lovely listening to the stories and your journey. So thank you.
I think also, as we're all in this, you know, learning together and working with Rohini the last few months, and with all, you know, the rest of the guys in the community, it's just so enriching. And I'm seeing too how, you know, with that knowledge of innate well-being, experiencing difficult feelings and uncomfortable feelings is different. You know, it's not that you don't have them. I've had plenty today.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Yeah.
I've been like, okay, I can do this, you know. But it's just different. You come at it and you just, it's lighter.
Yeah, not so scary. Maybe
Yeah,
that's how.
yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ellie.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I heard a lot in what you were saying with when you had that experience with socks and he wouldn't come to you because he was kind of experiencing your energy. And I grew up with horses when I was younger, and we kind of always sort of had them. And I had this amazing Shetland pony called Twinkle. She was on loan, and she was that sort of pony that went round everyone in Pony Club, and she was completely bomb proof, and you just trusted her with your life. And I completely did. But then and we'd sort of had different horses on loan and things like that, and I always felt really, and even now thinking about like getting on a horse that I don't know, or whatever, I think because they're so massive and can be quite unpredictable at times, but I guess that sort of, they would be sensing sort of my energy or my fear almost, coming from me. And yeah, never quite kind of thought about that before, so that's really interesting. And how did your sort of the horses then reacted? Could you kind of sense their behavior changing in reaction to how your behavior changed?
Oh, completely, yes. And I just became, you know, I just learned to see better. It was like, you know, I was trained in such a traditional way. Really, it's the military about how to be around horses, you know, and I'd never really questioned it. And I'd never spent that much time on the ground with a horse other than managing, you know, cleaning it and grooming it and doing the stable. I'd never actually just hung out with a herd of horses and really watched them and observed their behavior, you know. And I mean, the first 40 years of horsemanship, I'd never considered that the horse was a prey animal and that I'm a predator. And nobody told me that in the BHS, you know.
No. That's a revelation to me as well.
Yeah, so there was so much, and I think when I look back now, I can see how it was the beginning of me learning to walk in somebody else's shoes. You know, it was the beginning of understanding that we're all connected, and that you know, that animals have mental and emotional needs just like we do, you know. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's where it started really. And the day that Socks was looking at me from the other side of this arena, and he was on the end of a very long of a 40-foot rope, okay, but the rope was on the ground and I had to get him to come to me without picking up the rope and pulling it, and he wanted to. He was looking at me with his little ears pricked and his eyes, and he was looking at me going, I want to, but gee, you're scary, you know. Because I was like, come on, you've got to come to me. and I was so intense, and I probably looked like a really mean horse that was about to bite him on the nose, not drawn to, you know. And I mean, it wasn't that I was harsh with horses or unkind. I was just businesslike. Got the job done, and you know, looked after their physical needs, their feed, all that to a really high standard. But I'd never really considered really properly anything else, you know. And seeing that just turned the mirror onto me. And that was just like, it was just like it was like I suddenly got a new set of eyes.
Yeah, almost sounds like, you know, you'd gone from this sort of professional regimented to more seeing it as more of like a playful relationship, saying, you know, we're on the ground with them and everything like that. Yeah, it sounds like that just completely changed.
Yeah, the language. I mean, now I don't work my horses, I play with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just completely different. They're coming from a completely different place, you know. I'm just happy to be with them, as opposed to, and in horseland, you know, when you meet someone with a horse, the first thing they say to you is, what do you do with them? And I used to tell them, you know, but now I just kind of smile and don't say anything really.
Yeah,
because it's not so much about doing, it's about being, you know.
yeah.
See, I told you we could talk horses all night.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Nicole. So I'm sorry, I know I told you you couldn't ride my horse, so don't bring that up again.
I'm over it. It's fine. It's fine. Although I really now I want to bring my teenage son down to see you. But
Well,
anyway,
you have an invitation already, so you know that.
that's lovely. Yeah. We'll maybe talk about that. We come down to box every year. So I really liked that. And I liked the way it was a story about a teacher doing that thing with a bit of paper. Somehow, I don't know why that felt even more powerful, and I felt it too. I definitely got a bit wet-eyed at that point, and yeah, found that quite moving, and it makes me want to do iHeart, because I feel like I need stories. I feel like I need stories to explain it, and I don't have enough. But anyway, that's a
check out their website. I mean, they've got some great, you know, if you want to find out more about it.
Yeah. No, I have been in touch with them in the past, but anyway. And I was really struck by your story of socks as well, and it made me think of one of the, I don't teach them anymore, but I think it was maybe 6 years ago, I was teaching for about 6 years a class that I had every Monday morning, and every Sunday night I would say to myself, you're not going to go in tomorrow, you're sick. I hated the thought of it. They were school refusers. I was frightened of them. They were all sort of 14, 15, 16-year-olds. They were mean girls. They were, I don't know, they were, you know, dangerous boys.
Yeah.
And I was doing art with them, and I hated it. And I knew I couldn't take them. I shouldn't take them personally. I shouldn't take their behavior personally. And I just didn't know how to not. I just didn't know how to not. And other classes too, I was just having these issues with that I just couldn't work out. I was thinking, I'm a nice person, you know, I'm kind, I'm thoughtful, but somehow I just used to bang up against them. And it was obviously the energy that I was giving off was the problem. And although I could see it with my Monday class, I just couldn't see what I was doing wrong. And it was actually the sort of talking about 3 principles and all of that actually did make things turn about for me.
Yeah.
But it's not something you do, is it? It's a really difficult thing to explain how that changes, really. But I'm seeing it now with students as well, so I'm really going to think about that, because I know the issues I'm bumping up against with students is the same thing. It's the energy I'm giving off is the problem.
Yeah.
And while I know that, I still don't quite know what to do about it. But I guess seeing it clearly is maybe the first thing.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had a lot of experience working in classrooms, but I've taught iHeart for a year in year 5 and 6, and one class of year 7. So sort of 10, 11 and 12, 13, that sort of area. And I know in the beginning, you know, there was some youngsters who were quite challenging and disruptive, and I remember getting a bit hot and sticky, and you know, so I know what you're talking about, and especially when things went wrong, you know, if the tech didn't work or the computer, I couldn't get the slides up, or the video wouldn't play, I'd be like, oh my god, what do I do now, you know? But I mean, the iHeart teaching did help me, because I learned to recognize when I was, you know, off track, when I was getting in a state because I wanted it to go well, or getting in a state because I wanted the kids to learn, you know, when I wanted it to work. And that just noticing that kind of would help me catch it. And then I would just, something would change.
Yeah. Yes, it's definitely a sense of self-awareness, I guess, is the is the thing that helps it change. No, that's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, Linda.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for your talk. It was brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
What stood out for me was how you would learn something and then apply it as a tool, or thinking you were fixed without internalizing it, and you needed to sort of having a second run, and then you got it, because that's something I see happen quite often, that you can bring something to someone, but it can't land yet.
Yeah.
And and it just takes time.
Yeah.
And I always think, neither for them or for me, we need to get frustrated, because it just takes time. And some people, they're there and it clicks right away. And sometimes you just need a second run at it. And a year later, it all comes together, and you had it so going on in your story. So I just wanted to reflect that I've seen that pattern before, and I know now, because I used to get frustrated when I tried to convey someone to help someone, and they would do the technique, but it didn't land, and I thought, why? But it's just it doesn't always happen all in once. There's more that needs to be ready for it really to be able to sink in. And so your story was so beautiful told, and thank you.
Thank you. I actually, that bit I wanted to show was that kind of pattern of how I'd work, you know, how this had gone, where I'd kind of grabbed the tools and the techniques and busily got doing, you know, without letting it settle, without just like you see. So I'm glad you saw that, because I was hoping that would come across. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Tanya.
Hi, everyone. First, I would like to apologize for coming in so a little bit late. I've been having technical difficulties, but I'm glad that I was able to come in, share, and this has been absolutely great. I love your passion and your dedication to your horses and this understanding. It reminds me of a time back when I was dealing with a lot of issues with anxiety. Well, I'm still dealing with it, but when I was in therapy some years back, and I part of the program was well, it was different modalities of therapy, and one of the aspects of the therapy, I did some equine therapy, and we went to this ranch, and there was horses, and the lady that was teaching at the ranch, she was telling us how it was about our emotions, that the horses felt our emotions, and they sensed what we were dealing with, and how that was connection. We and the horses felt our energy from their energy. And I'm an animal lover, you know, I love animals. And I was so intimidated, and we did a couple of routines with the animals, and it was so enlightening and so inspiring, and how after just a couple of different things, and how I kind of slowed down and really got in tuned with the horses. I was able to like, they were able to like kind of sense my vulnerability, and I sensed their vulnerability, and they came, they came to me, and um, I guess it was a trust factor,
Sure. Yeah.
a sense of trust and camaraderie, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get to that point at times, even with people, um, especially when you're at a vulnerable state in your life. Um, um, it just resonates with me, um, and I just agree with a lot of everything that everyone else said. It I enjoyed your story about socks, and it just brings joy to my heart, um, about your journey, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Tanya. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, it looks like there's no more hands up. So I just want to say thank you. This has been quite different to what I expected, I think. In that I've really enjoyed it. So that's a good start. So yeah, so thank you for your comments. Thank you for showing up. And yeah, I don't think I've got anything else to say except thank you and I love you all. So
thanks, Sharon.
yeah. Hi, Sharon. I haven't seen you for ages.
I know we'll sort that out.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoyed it, Sharon.
Lovely to see
Lovely.
you.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna switch off the recording now, and then